groups were listed. Non-formal, we discussed that area about the Quranic scripts and said it should be changed to Arabic scripts. But just this morning I was discussing with Ustaz today, who was sitting by my side, and he confirmed that it was an initiative from ISESCO that standardized usage of the Quranic scripts of all Sahelian countries be used in this thing as Quranic scripts, and it was endorsed. So I think we don't have anything to query about that. But because it belongs to the group, I dare not omit it. School feeding and agriculture, grants and levies, teacher incentives, and efficiency measures are all okay, no queries. So that is the end of our presentation. Thanks.
Short and to the point. Can we have group 4, quick? And she's not around. Okay. Let's have group 5 then. 5. Nobody? Group 5? Group 6 then.
Statements and the strategies, and it's not included here, means that we are satisfied with what is there. Under conditional cash transfer, just like the other groups, members were concerned about the use of the term marabouts and felt that if at all want to use it, it needs to be defined, because people in those areas don't use the word marabouts. Under physical facilities, members of the team were happy with the inclusion of the customized donkey carts, but felt that we should restructure it in such a way that it will lead to provide schools with donkey carts, to provide school donkey carts with appropriate technology to cater for differently abled students. Madrasa education. Members of the team felt it is not just enough to develop guidelines on standard specification for construction of facilities, but that the policy should also include the provision of standard facilities for recognized madrasas. The team felt that there is a group that is not catered for, and that is those students who, after grade 9, could not gain access to senior secondary schools, and felt that there should be an additional policy statement that reads pre-vocational programs with a skills for life approach will be strengthened to empower students who do not meet the requirement for senior secondary schools. And the team came up with the following strategies. Establish a home for pre-vocational programs in MOBS. Coordinate and strengthen pre-vocational programs with a skills for life approach. Establish links with MOAS to provide completers of the pre-vocational programs with the opportunity to further their education in higher institutions in the same way as it does for academic students. And finally, sensitize stakeholders on the significance of the pre-vocational programs. The team was also not comfortable with the area where it is situated, non-formal education, But since we don't have anything on TVET, we felt the only area that caters for this one is non-formal education, but it is left with the House to decide whether it will still stay under non-formal education or to move to somewhere else. School feeding and agriculture. The team noted that the policy statement talks about the environment or environmental issues, but there was no strategy to address that policy statement. And as a result, the team came up with the following: establish environmental clubs in all schools, develop and implement environment-friendly programs in line with the National Environment Education Communication Strategy in all schools. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Group 5. Is Group 4 around? Okay.
These are the emerging issues from the discussions held amongst members of Group 4. It will be a very, very short presentation. Under access and equity, the group felt there were some gaps, especially with regards to those children that are at home, that are not receiving any education and are at home, and those that are very poor, and some of them that are at the ECD level. So there is a need to have a sub-team on which would create avenues to include those children that are not targeted for at all. That is those children that are at home. They are not neither in the madrasas nor are they in the conventional schools or the majlis. It also talks about involving stakeholders to enforce policy implementation, because we're talking a lot about children, every child having the right to be in school, or every child should be in school, but it is not being enforced, because there are a lot of parents that do not send their children to school. The group further talks about, still on the access and equity, that there is a need to increase sensitization at all levels to get all children on board, that every stakeholder should be on board and to ensure that children have access to education. On the conditional cash transfer, there is this bullet point that talks about marabous. So instead of marabous, they're suggesting that we substitute marabous with proprietors, because a lot of people were confused about the definition for marabous. So to substitute marabous with proprietors. They also talked about improving the learning environment and condition of the majlis, because it leaves a lot to be desired, because the conditions in which they are really, most of the time, not acceptable. So there is a need to include in the strategies improving the learning condition of the majlis. Thank you.
6. Here, these are observations. Thematic areas are sufficient to consolidate the gains and address the inherent weaknesses. The sub-thematic areas are sufficient enough to address the inherent weaknesses as outlined in the CSR 2010. Under policy statements, there is a bone of contention on the definition and determinants on literacy, preamble on non-formal education. The statistics on illiteracy as defined in the CSR 2010 is worrying and needs further research. Strategies. Sensitization of stakeholders be included as a strategy on grants and levies. Public be changed to private on grants and levy strategies. If you check the booklet that was given, under this section, it should read private instead of public. Preamble on gender, education, and statements need to reflect not only on poverty, but equally on attitude and behavior that often result to dropout. Thank you.
Thank you. Satisfied with the questions, whether they were sufficient and adequate. Others actually came up with additions, either at the level of the sub-theme or at the level of the strategies. I want to open the floor, but before I do so, I also have some comments and observations that I have seen, and I want to share this with all of you, and then we can take it up from there. The first observation I have is that the preambles have been provided for all these sub-themes. This is very good, and because each of them is kind of tied to a given context. But I think what was missing is that in the main thematic areas, like access and equity, quality of teaching and learning, and even the sector management, there needs to be a preamble at that level. And that preamble should actually detail out or describe the context, because this is not just a standalone policy. There were a series of studies done, and one of them, of course, is our famous CSR, and that actually gave us a lot of information and justification why we need to respond to some of those issues. And of course, some of the emerging issues. So actually, in the preamble, we should be able to describe briefly the context and provide a justification for that particular thematic area. That is one of the observations I'm making. The other observation, I think this came up yesterday, relates to the policy anticipating.
Just to make a quick response to some of the issues raised. Group 3 talked about the need to detail out the syllabus for the CCT in the policy. I just want to remind the group that this is not an operational policy, it's a strategic policy. And basically what we put in this policy are essentially broad statements of intent. Exactly. All right? Now, for us to be able to operationalize the policy, we'll be working on a strategic plan, where those details of operations, of course, will emerge. Group 5 talked about a very important point, and this is to do with skills training. Like I said yesterday, both MOPSI and MOHAS have an opportunity to create a point of convergence on a number of policy issues. One policy issue is the institutional home for skills training, not for the post-secondary graduates, but post-basic graduates. In the current policy, when we used to have